The SP 500 and the Nasdaq 100, we're going to talk about exactly where we're going, how we're moving, and ultimately the direction of the market over the coming week and about 1 to 2 months. But before we get into that, to ask you to do two things: like and subscribe. Every single day I make videos for you, so you are prepared on the market. You get an unbiased viewpoint of what's happening here, the news to come, and what to expect over the coming days and weeks. And if you are not, the Twitter link is down below, so you get all that information as well, so you can see the charts and everything in between. On top of that, if you are looking to learn how to trade, get into trading, and see what we're doing throughout the day with over 900 like-minded traders, the Discord link is down below. Make sure you check it out. But let's get right back into the content. So the first thing we're looking at is going to be specifically the Nasdaq. Now, this is where we spend a majority of our time throughout the day. For me specifically, I'm looking at the Nasdaq and ES futures, and then I move on to whatever equities that I'm liking to trade. Now, if we look at what we're liking here specifically on the day, let's talk about it. So let's see exactly where we're at. So one, I do want to highlight a few things here. On the Nasdaq, you have about a 1 hour. This is the 2 hour chart, but you can see even on the 2 hour, you have like a 2 hour supply that formed here. We don't like going down to smaller time frames, but sometimes we have to see some of these levels. But you can see on the 2 hour, you had the supply form, and we did not anticipate this, right? So when we looked at what was happening, right? And before I state this, I want to say right now, I'm bearish. I do have bearish positions and establishing those even further going into March 17th right now for the Qs. So the Nasdaq specifically. But looking at this, I expected if you started to mount above 1149, which was your previous swing high here. So we broke down, retested, and pushed down. That 1149 was a big level. We anticipated if you held above that you would push very quickly and easily to basically 11.7, 11.8. That's your next supply range up here. That's your big boy. It's a 4 hour level there. Now, as we look at this, you're finding turbulence, right? So when we come in, let's really look at what's happening. You're pushing up, getting rejected, pushing back up, getting rejected. If we go look at something as well as volume, and I know some people here just don't really care about volume, but again, this is what I look for in reversals. And we look what happened. Basically, if we go back to last Friday, we had a really good chunk of volume here on the 6th. Nice decent chunk come in here on the 9th, and then obviously CPI yesterday, which was the best volume since last Friday. Now, from here, what's happened on those days? Obviously, on Friday, on the 6th, we had some really interesting behavior. You could argue it was a trap. So you push down to open the day, and then boom, shoot back up to locally up to 11.17. A pretty great end of the day there, to say the least. And then moving into this week, we go into yesterday, what happened there, which was your second highest day of volume. You get a nice push up at open, a massive drop, and then kind of an end of the day hold around like a flat level, right? So if we look over the past 2 days, even though we've had quote unquote bullish behavior based on equities and what's happened there, what has the story really been? We've only necessarily moved up from CPI 90 points, give or take. Not even. Just want to throw that out there. So when we look at this, it causes me to be concerned on the market. Now, I've gone over that CPI information, and if you haven't watched that video, I recommend doing so. It's this video right here. This is me going over CPI in depth, and I think you'll get something out of it, but I'm not going to repeat that here today. Now, I do have to point out from an unbiased standpoint what's happening here from the technicals. And if you're just a pure technical trader, I think you have to be bullish. I love technicals. I use them all day, every day, but I have to merge, and that's where option drops really comes together. It's a perfect mix of fundamentals and technicals. That's at least what I aim for it to be. So what we can see here, something very similar. And what I want to do is show you a use case here. So I'm going to go really quick over to TradingView, and I'm just going to give you a quick example of kind of what's happened here. Okay, so just bear with me. We're going to get rid of all the drawings on the chart, but let's look really quick. This is going back into June and July. So what's something that we were seeing here back in June and July that was really interesting? We can see our local highs that we'd make. Let's just point out a few of them, right? We're just going to really quickly come out and mark these out. This is just basically over that course of the run up. What happened here? You would push, you made your bottom down here, you mounted previous high. You can even point one out right here also, so we can see that. So what happens? So you push up, retest, push up, retest, push up, retest over and over of your previous levels, over and over again. And when does that downtrend come back? Is when we break some of those levels, right? We start to make lower lows. That's when that happens. And when we look back from there, you never really looked back and you came all the way back down and ended up making new 52-week lows. Now, we didn't see that behavior on the last push up that we had back here. So what we're going to do, and I want to highlight, this was on a daily time frame, so we can see this is very volatile movements, right? So we get really big pushes, come back down a little bit, but then really strong pushes. Now, if we look here, you're getting good pushes, but it's a lot slower. So this is where I think we have to start breaking down where we're at. So let's get a little bit into this. So we look at the 4 hour, you can see you're doing this somewhat, but just on smaller time frames. So it's not as strong, if you will. So you can see we had our level here, and we're just doing that really quickly for you guys, okay? So just bear with me. It's giving you an example, right? So if you spread this out, you can see we are mounting this level, mounting the level, mounting the level. Now, it's not as pretty. I will say that. You've had pretty big wicks, and you come back up. So I will say that buyers are stronger than sellers. They're holding you above, but the wicks are kind of nasty, and it's moving a lot slower. We've seen VIX really getting hit from this based on the movement also. So that's my concern here, is that you're just doing this really slow, but you're still staying in a bullish structure. Okay, I have to acknowledge that, right? I have to show you, even if it doesn't side with my thesis, I still have to show you both sides of what's happening here, right? Because I want it to be as transparent as possible. So as we look here, I'm shocked we have not tested 11.7, 11.8. It would not surprise me if we test that. I'm totally prepared in my position for that, and that's probably where I finished my position off. But as we look at this, it has to be a cause for concern, especially when it comes back to the data. That is my major cause of concern, is the data, the data, the data. So when we come in here, I'm looking at this. We're still ending the day in the week here. It's getting rejected. It's okay. It is what it is. Now, a little bit deeper, where are we at specifically on some of the larger time frames? When we look at some of the big indicators we've been using, such as the 200 SMA and the 100 SMA. Those have been massive indicators over the past, few months. I do want to highlight that. So when we look here at Nasdaq, let's look here on the daily chart. You are mounting that 100 SMA, or the 200 SMA, on the weekly. I do want to highlight that. It's a big level and you're above it. You are actually still below, actually a little bit above. You're going to close above the 100 SMA on the daily. So these are big levels, and we can see. So specifically on Nasdaq, you have not been able to hold this on a daily time frame since essentially back in September. I want to highlight that. So this is something really big there. Now we're going to look at ES futures and what's going on here. Coming into ES, the story's a little bit different, but I do want to highlight this nonetheless. So we're going to do the 100-day SMA. That's all I really care about right now. And we can see basically in December, there was some interesting behavior. Let's get rid of the overall volume and drawing so you can just see what's happening here. And we'll get rid of VWAP so it's just clear. So in December and November, we can see we basically just pinched between the 200 and the 100, back and forth, back and forth. This was interesting behavior here also the past, week or so. We've gone just straight through the 100 and then straight through the 200. This is pretty strong behavior from indexes. I will say that. And as long as you remain above this 200 SMA on the daily, I think you have to be looking for that upside. Now, what I will say is when we look at the drawings, you can see what's happening here. You're still theoretically and technically down in this downtrend, right? The year-long downtrend on ES, right? We have to visualize and understand what's happening here. Still down below it. So understand that's happening. That's where you're at. These are some of the big levels. And again, that's where we're at. I will say right now, my position on Nasdaq and Qs is it's a very aggressive play, but I just like to share my honest opinions and what I do. Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I share what I do here. Now, that's what we're looking at. Now, in between that, I will also say some of the trades that I took today, and I've only been posting my scalps, my quick in and outs here on the trade ideas. So today I took one specifically on Microsoft. I never entered Tesla because I didn't get the high of the day break when I wanted it. And then I entered a SPY one also. So those all performed pretty well, but those are on the smaller time frames. My eye is making money on the big swing opportunities. If you've been here for any time at all, then you understand the big swings are where I make my money. When it comes to September, going back into November, going into June, July, the big swings are where we made a bulk of our money here on the channel. So again, that's where I'm putting most of my focus. If I'm trading on scalps, I'm looking to overall just cut down my drawdown, right? So hypothetically, actually, the exact example is today Looking at my account, I believe my Qs were down about $750 at the end of the day. I made about 700 on SPY, then 500 on Microsoft. So I still ended the day net green and net positive, but my goal isn't even necessarily to make tons of money off the scalping aspect. It's again to just make sure I can stay profitable and stay just even flat on that Q position in general. That's my goal here. There's nothing crazy. I don't plan on making $2,000, $4,000 a day, right? That's not my goal there. It's just to stay and keep that position positive on Qs so I can continue to fund that if I will. And again, I do plan on probably getting to the double down territory if we get to 11.7, 11.8. That's my opinion. That's what I'm doing. Again, just sharing with you guys. That's all there. Now, a few things before I let you out of here. Again, the video won't be super long. Again, videos lately have just been shorter. I want to talk about something on VIX. Now, if we look at VIX here on the daily, I will say today was a very important day. If we look here on VIX, we talked about the $19, $20 level. Every time we've touched this range over the past year, you've bounced very strong. Now, things have gotten a little bit more interesting. You've broken it. You've actually almost made 52-week. You've made 51-week lows, not 52-week. Because if we look all the way back here, we have to, again, be unbiased, show you where we're at. This was our last week in January, right? This would be 52 if we got below 17.3. But you're right there on VIX. Extremely, extremely, extremely low. And I wanted to show you this position here on VIX. You saw a $6.3 million out of the money call for 24 at the strike for April 19th, right? You could argue, and again, I want to share both sides of this so I don't seem overly bearish or, sided to my viewpoint, right? This could very well be a hedge. So you could be going long on equities and using something like VIX to leverage your position. So just in case if we do start getting a crazy drop, you are prepared. What do we know right now? Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, they're all expecting a pretty gnarly drop still in this quarter. They're still expecting about a 20% drop across the board on this market in general. So I do want to address that, the elephant in the room, things we've been talking about here. None of that's changed, but this is what I'm watching on VIX. A little bit deeper too, as we look at yields, we started seeing some interesting yield movement also today. We started seeing a little bit more of the draw up on the 10 versus 30. You're seeing a little bit of a spike on the 10-year. The 10-year's rising a little bit on the day. Okay, nothing super interesting. Not a lot of volatility kicking in here. TLT, something we have been watching. We've been watching this closely. TLT on the day, although the behavior was good on the market, TLT had drawdown. It was only dropping on the day. So this is a concern for me. Now, if we look at the volume on the day for SPY, let me give you a refresh here into the end of after hours. You end your day at 63 million. Your average 30-day volume has been around 82 million. So you're coming in well below that. What I will say is that it is a holiday weekend, so we're going to have a 3-day weekend going into MLK Day on Monday, so we won't open back up till Tuesday. So that could be a reason for the lower volume, but I do want to highlight that also. Low volume on this push-up, and really low volume all week long on this push-up, okay? Just pointing out what's happening, things you need to be viewing. Going a little bit further next week, some of the data points we can be viewing. Now, we do have earnings still coming in. We have JP Morgan and we have Morgan Stanley, and I believe we have Goldman coming into this week. The only big tech earnings that we will have is going to be Netflix, and then after next week is when the earnings season really heats up and really begins. But next week, what's going on here? There's not anything going on Monday going into Tuesday. We start to have a little bit more though. So coming into Tuesday morning, we can see we have some Fed members speaking. I really don't care for anything they've been saying lately. It's just them saying CPI is moving positive, even though the only thing positive about CPI is energy is going down. We go into Wednesday, you start to get more information. Core retail sales, that will be important. PPI month over month, also important. That will be very valuable, retail sales specifically, so we can see overall demand. It'll give us an insight into some of these earnings also. Going into next, you have your building permits. Real estate market, don't really care about it right now. We'll talk more about that in another video. Philadelphia Manufacturing Index, this will also be very important. We want to see what happens there. But that's going to be a bulk of what we're looking at for next week. I'll give you more updates throughout the week regarding this. I think one thing we need to keep an eye on also is going to be oil and energy, because again, our SPR reserves are at all-time lows. So the US is going to hit its debt limit on Thursday. I probably should have started with this, okay? Now, I know people are going to question saying, oh, this means we're going to drop. Again, I don't want to get overly optimistic to the bear side. Most likely they'll step in and raise the debt limit once again. They've done this over and over and over. But this is going to be very important to be watching specifically on the market. Again, let's just get some more debt, boys. What's the worst that could happen? We just change the definition of inflation and the market just keeps on trucking along. So this is my viewpoint. This is what I'm watching for. Overall, again, ES, what you're looking for here. My target's still here. I still want to see 4,100. I think it's still possible. We are above the 200 MA. That is bullish. If we look at the Nasdaq, 11.7, 11.8 is your next range. I'm shocked we haven't tested that yet. There's still some upside potential across the board. So just be viewing that in the short term. This is what I'm looking at. If you have any questions, ask down below. More in-depth market review on broad things going over a large portion of the market will be coming out Sunday. Have a good one, traders.